of the American Association of University Women, the Watertown branch, I would like to welcome you to tonight's Senate District 13 Candidate Forum. Our moderator for this evening's event is Jill Nadeau. Jill is the producer and fill-in host for The Larry Mueller Show, heard around the state on Wisconsin Public Radio. She formerly worked as the coordinator for Watertown TV and hosted many local shows. With that, I introduce tonight's moderator, Jill Nadeau.
Thank you very much, Pat. I'd like to welcome our candidates for the Wisconsin State Senate District 13 to tonight's forum. They are Ben Schmitz, Melissa Winker, and Spencer Zimmerman. The fourth candidate, John Jagler, declined our invitation. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce him or herself, and then we will ask the first of 10 questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each. The order that the candidate will answer will alternate. Original order was determined alphabetically by last name. A slide will appear for each question. After I read the question, the name of the candidate to start will be listed. When that happens, that candidate will begin. There will be 30-second and 15-second reminders. I will not introduce each speaker. They will respond when their name appears. After the last question, candidates will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. Let's begin with our first introduction.
Thanks, Jill. My name is Ben Schmitz, and I'm the Solidarity Party candidate for Wisconsin State Senate District 13. I spent a lot of time last year on the front lines in Wisconsin, including responding to some violent riots in Kenosha and Madison, and helping our state respond to the COVID crisis. I have firsthand experience of today's important issues and lessons learned that I'd like to share with my fellow Wisconsinites. I believe that we need to make room for more parties, starting with ranked choice voting. Now more than ever, we must listen to each other and sincerely consider other opinions. Dialogue and honest, open discussions with others is the starting point to healing our divisions. We have to listen without condemning. We have to try to understand each other. We have to ask questions. We have to let others challenge our opinions. I believe that we, the people, must take responsibility for improving our law enforcement by giving our officers the standards and tools to do a difficult job. That begins with clearly defining rules for the use of force at the state level. Right now, the legal justification for the use of force is the subjective feeling of being threatened, except whenever there is a public outcry. That's not a fair standard. As a leader, I know the meaning of command responsibility. It's the leader's job to give the subordinate the means to make good decisions. We, the people, are the leaders. We have to give our law enforcement good direction on how we want them to act and give them the tools to do that effectively, with clear rules for the use of force. I'm also passionately pro-life for the whole life and believe that we must find ways to help mothers in hardship. I believe that the overexpanding of the national and state debt is short-sighted, a serious risk, and a burden to our economy. And I believe that our nation's moral character is more important than its affluence. Thank you for listening today.
First and foremost, thank you very much. AAUW, this dedicated group of women, understands the critical necessity of civic engagement in organizing this forum. Ben Schmitz and Spencer Zimmerman, thank you for participating this evening. But where is the other candidate? John Jagler, a resident of the very town that this event is being put on in. Your current elected assembly representative has chosen to not show up to share his voice with the community he is supposed to represent. My name is Melissa Winker, and I will always show up for you. I'm a fourth generation Wisconsinite, an 18-year national board educator, a mom, a firefighter's wife, a small business owner, and a woman of faith who will put our safety, our jobs, and our community first in everything I do as your state senator. I believe in common decency and our ability to love and care for each other. This strengthens our community. I grew up in a WELS church, Wisconsin Evangelical Lutheran Synod, which has strong ties to our community. And sitting in Bible class when I was in elementary school, I was taught to love others as ourselves, not create division. This respect of human dignity for everyone, not just the wealthiest among us, is what drives me to support policy that is compassionate and fiscally responsible. I'm here today because I know we can do better. When I look into the eyes of my 5 kids, when I support my husband as a first responder, a firefighter who works on the front lines with folks in their darkest hours. I know this is what we are called to be. But now we have an opportunity for truth, for transparency, and for putting our community first. We have a real choice for Senate District 13. I'm running to fight for our families, our small businesses, our school, and the health and safety of everyone in our community. I'm fighting for decency and a responsible government that is working and will always show up for you. Thank you.
Go ahead, Spencer.
Thank you for allowing me to get my message out to the people of the 13th Senate District. I just want to let everyone know, all the voters out there, everyone who's watching this, there's something wrong with my camera. It's not really bad lighting. I'm not just in a very dark room. So it's just a technical difficulty here. Unfortunately, I only have audio. And let me just start by asking the same question. Where is John Jagler? Why isn't he here? Why won't he face the voters of the 13th Senate District? Is he on vacation? Is he back in Louisville, Kentucky, where he was born? Maybe he's, who knows where he is, but he's definitely not ready to face the voters of Wisconsin. That's the question. That's what really differentiates us from him. And he's also not willing to sign the U.S. term limits pledge. He's the one candidate that has not signed the U.S. term limits pledge. And, term limits has actually been a top priority of mine for many years. I'm a strong supporter of term limits. And, it's ironic that he's just the one candidate that won't sign term limits pledge when he is the incumbent assembly representative who's been in there for so long. And, it just shows that, these politicians, and I'm sure at one point, probably in Jagler's career, when he was, first running for office, he might have said in a speech at some point, probably, that he supports term limits. But once they get elected, they just keep, they get bought out by the special interests. They just keep getting reelected over and over again. And that's why I think we need to focus on priorities like term limits, and we need to make sure that the elected officials are held accountable and will face the voters. Because if they won't face the voters, then they should be voted out of office.
Thank you, all three, for answering or introducing yourselves. Let's go to the first question. How do you feel the current legislature has responded to the pandemic, and how would you improve the response? And the first person to answer that will be Melissa, I believe. Yes, go ahead, Melissa.
We have tragically lost 500,000 American lives. In Wisconsin, over 6,440. These are difficult times for many of us, and I believe we need to be guided by compassion and an expert response. With a unified plan, we can build back our economy and our education systems safely. Our current Republican legislators, with their anti-science initiatives, have used public taxpayer money to sue against wearing masks, one of the simplest, compassionate, and bipartisan supported actions. They didn't meet for over 8 months when we had multiple crises happening in our great state. We are ready, Republicans and independents and Democrats, to lead our government and show up. We need positive policy that will lead us through the pandemic by supporting our jobs, fixing our unemployment system, and assisting schools who need the resources to teach safely. We do not need to choose between supporting our families' health and supporting our thriving businesses. We need both. Thank you.
Well, what we need to do is we need to end the lockdowns. And, the governor has basically shut the state down. And the real problem right now, too, is with the new Biden administration and their open borders policy, which is a huge threat of COVID. you have basically our borders have just been opened up. You had 27 people packed into a Ford Explorer crossing the Mexican border in California. There was an accident. Half of them are dead. Half of them are injured. And, there's just going to be caravans coming to this country. And, we had Ellis Island. We had, when our immigration system worked, we would screen people to make sure that they didn't have diseases. Now more than ever, we should secure our borders. This is the last time that we should be halting wall construction. We're in the middle of a pandemic. If you're going to really take the pandemic seriously, you need to end illegal immigration, halt the people coming into this country that aren't being vetted. You can go through an airport and they'll screen you, but you can cross the border and you can have thousands of people coming into this country with COVID.
At the beginning of the pandemic, when we were first discovering what COVID was about, strong restrictions made a lot of sense. And I want to talk about two different responses here, one from the legislature and one from the governor. And the legislature didn't respond in kind, in the sense that businesses needed help because the government shut them down. And we need to have a unified response to emergencies like COVID. And if we're going to be shutting down businesses, then we also need to be supporting them. It's not fair to tell a business they can't do business, but also at the same time do nothing to remedy that. Now, PPP helped a lot. My business benefited a lot from that. We were able to keep our employees that we had, but we need to do better than that. And then on the second point, the governor in the state legislature closed the emergency order and he opened it right back up again. He made a new emergency order right the same night. And that, in my mind, is an abuse of power. And regardless of whether you think that there should be COVID restrictions still, it's not acceptable that a governor would use his emergency powers and abuse his emergency powers by overriding the legislature's closing of those emergency powers.
On to question number 2. We know the legislative districts will be redrawn this year. How do you think the process should be facilitated? Spencer, you're first.
Sorry for the delay there. Before we can address redistricting, we need to make sure our elections are secure and that we can all be confident in the results. Cybersecurity and preventing future rigged elections will be a priority of mine. Ballot placement gives an unfair advantage to whomever is placed first on the ballot, as much as 20%, as some studies have shown. In the last 10 years, I've been on the ballot 8 times in elections where ballot placement was determined solely by the Wisconsin Elections Commission or its predecessor, the Government Accountability Board, and my name has not appeared first. We should fix this problem with random ballot placement. John Jagler, when he was first elected back in 2012, was first on the ballot out of 5 candidates. He had great luck. When he ran in the primary, he was also first on the ballot. You give someone a 20 percentage point advantage, and they almost can't lose. And when you give the establishment candidate, like John Jagler, a 20% advantage, when he's already got all the endorsements, he's already got all the super PAC money coming in, he's already got all the every single advantage possible of an incumbent representative. We just need to fix a broken system.
Redistricting. I believe that we need formula-based redistricting, and I'm ready to take that to the state constitution, because the only truly nonpartisan method for districting is a nonpartisan formula. Say that we take counties east to west, south to north, and across, we group together precincts, voting precincts within that county, east to west or west to east, and until we meet a certain threshold of population. And then we start again. Simple formulas like this are achievable. We can group together precincts so that voters are grouped according to their geographic location, and it's completely nonpartisan. The nonpartisan, so-called nonpartisan attempts that have been made they've always failed because any nonpartisan attempt is biased and has to be partisan. The only true nonpartisan redistricting is formula-based redistricting.
In 2011, in a locked room with the best mapping experts, Republicans created district maps that solidify the power of one party always winning an election. Doesn't matter what party you identify with, neither Democrat or Republican. Map on statewide seats went Democratic, and both the Assembly and Senate showed a gerrymandered 60% Republican. You know that the maps are rigged. The fallout of gerrymandering, your representative doesn't have to show up, listen to you, attend public forums. The will of the people can be easily ignored because they will continue to be elected, like accepting Medicaid expansion. 82% of Wisconsinites believe that, or fair maps, 72% of Wisconsinites. And then they spend your tax dollars, $4 million, to defend these rigged maps. We live in one of the most gerrymandered states in the nation, and over 70% support fair, nonpartisan maps. I have signed the pledge. I will always fight for what is right, and the majority of folks in Wisconsin believe. Representative democracy for our great state. Thank you.
Question 3. What do you see as District 13's broadband needs, and how will you address them?
Thanks, Joe. I think that broadband availability it's a problem that will be fixed very soon by growing technology. Right now, the best that we can do, and I think the best that we should do, is focus on clearing bureaucratic hurdles for new technologies. We have new technologies coming, like satellite internet and SpaceX producing satellite internet for rural areas. Almost it's available for some already. I think that the best that the legislature can do to address internet access is enable new technologies and companies that are trying to provide that access, enable them by clearing bureaucratic hurdles and any kind of restrictions that are preventing business growth in that area.
Our district small towns depend on being connected to run businesses and educate our kids. Several members of this forum had to go to other locations because their broadband did not have the capability to run the software this evening. We are a collection of amazing communities in this district, from Beaver Dam to Forest, Watertown, Mayville, Columbus, and my area, Village of Summit and Economowoc. And we value living in these small towns because we know our neighbors and we support our local businesses. We love living next to family and friends and being close to nature. And the pandemic has shown us how critical broadband access is to working and educating our kids. It is a necessary support. It gives us the freedom to choose where we live and where we work and where we open businesses. Wisconsin is the second worst state in the entire country with broadband access. The infrastructure we need is now. It will allow us to compete in our district, in our state, and internationally. As a small business owner, my family understands the weight of analyzing growth and financial risk, and we rely on the internet to do business effectively. We are incredibly hard workers in our district and state, and government's role is to make our life easier and safer for us to enjoy our lives, operate our businesses, and go to work. Thank you very much.
Well, okay, I just want to make sure I was unmuted there. Sorry. Well, broadband doesn't really mean much if you don't have electricity. And if you look at what's happening right now, America under Donald Trump achieved energy independence for the first time since the 1950s. The first thing Biden does when he gets in office is he kills the Keystone Pipeline. He's destroying our energy independence here in the United States. He's gone and canceled the Keystone Pipeline, which meant thousands of jobs, many of those jobs here in Wisconsin. I actually have been a strong supporter of the Keystone Pipeline. I actually lived in Nebraska where the Keystone Pipeline passes through, and I was serving in the Air Force at the time. and I was actually on duty during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And enemies like Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea all have or will soon acquire the capacity to deliver unimaginable destruction in minutes with little warning. Our energy grid, emergency and transportation system must be prepared to withstand an electromagnetic pulse caused by a high altitude nuclear detonation that would cripple electrical circuits and cause a nationwide blackout. Look at Texas. They had a blackout.
Okay. Thank you, Spencer. We ran out of time on that one. Question number 4. What is the most important issue that we face in District 13?
In District 13, I have talked to hundreds of people on the phone and pre-pandemic. I've knocked on thousands of doors as I ran for Assembly District campaign in District 38. And the number one issue I heard before the pandemic and after was affordable health care. People at times, no matter where you are on the economic spectrum, have had challenges affording their health care. So now, even more so, we're in the midst of one of the worst health crises of our time during the pandemic. A COVID plan so we can negotiate our health through this is paramount. Number 2 is supporting our great businesses. Because of this tragic pandemic, we need to realize that we need to support our great Wisconsin businesses. And we don't have to make a choice between our health and our businesses. This is a false choice that has been driven home by one political party. So that is what I've been hearing consistently at the doors and when I talk to thousands of people in this district.
Well, I think right now there's 75 million people that think the election was stolen. And we need to restore confidence in our elections. Because if you don't have that, you know, if people don't believe that their vote counts and they just quit voting, that's the end. And we need to make sure that we have the cybersecurity in place to prevent hacking. If you watch Absolute Proof, you can see the internet traffic coming from China. We were warned before the election that China was trying to manipulate the election, trying to affect the results of the election. And then you had COVID, you know, all kinds of rules thrown out because of the pandemic and you know, the Constitution being ignored. We need to restore confidence in our elections. And I think that's the number one priority for, you know, everyone whose vote they feel was stolen.
I believe that the number one important issue that we face in District 13 is the same issue that we face everywhere in the country. We're the most divided we've ever been. We live in completely different worlds from our neighbors. We think that we can't even talk to our neighbors often. We don't know how to listen to each other. We've forgotten how to disagree peaceably with other people, how to argue productively, seeking the truth by the things that we say, and not being afraid to speak up. I think that we need to relearn that disagreement is okay. We can disagree with somebody, and that the most important aspect of a conversation is that it's geared toward reaching a conclusion that's more accurate or more shows the truth than we had previously. And we do that by listening, by being open. Secondly, another very important issue is we don't do enough to assist the weak. We let people, though, now that we're so isolated, we let people suffer on their own, and we do nothing to help. And that, first of all, should be done through charitable work, charitable organization, friendships with neighbors, and then lastly, we need better, like Melissa said, we need better healthcare. We need better options for healthcare. That's a huge issue for those who are most vulnerable.
Thank you. This past November election has brought out much controversy regarding election procedures. How would you propose that these concerns be addressed? Spencer?
Well, I just got done talking about this topic, and it's such an important topic. I'm glad that it's being brought up again, because we need to secure our elections. And the beginning of securing our elections comes down to making sure that we're not handing out, either randomly or through a corrupt system, a 20 percentage point advantage to people just because they're first on the ballot. We need to randomize ballot placement, giving each candidate equal opportunity. If you got 5 candidates on a ballot and you're going to print out 50,000 ballots, make each of those candidates first on the ballot, and in 10,000 ballots, you'll give everyone equal opportunity to be first on the ballot. And if you look, you can see it over and over and over again in the election results. If you know where to look, if you know where to find out who was first on the ballot, you'll see over and over again that the establishment candidate with all the connections seems to somehow just manage to be picked supposedly randomly to be first on the ballot. This process, since 1848, we've had thousands, untold numbers of elections, and they're all decided by a hand picking a name out of a hat. Can we trust every single one of those hands?
This past November's election, there were a lot of claims about the legitimacy of the election. I spent a significant amount of time myself on several elections assisting the clerks of my area as a volunteer. And I believe that I everything that I saw, I couldn't imagine how someone could commit mass fraud in an election. I think that those who say that there was mass fraud with certainty, they must have some information that I don't, or they're trying to cause fear. Secondly, the absentee vote, there's been a lot of controversy about the absentee vote. The absentee vote is a legitimate means of exercising a right to vote. There's some people that really need the absentee vote. And I think that we found during this pandemic that an absentee vote works just as well at capturing the voter's intent as an in-person vote. And I think that we need to maintain that absentee vote is always available. The area of greatest concern is vote collection. We need to be concerned about vote collection, absentee vote collection by partisans, by political groups that target specific areas, and the handling of those votes by non-government entities. It should be handled by the clerk.
The most patriotic action we can do is vote. The right to vote is the cornerstone of our democracy, and I will fight all actions that aim to suppress our voice and our vote. The big lie of election fraud is being fueled today in Wisconsin by extreme Republican legislature. Even though it has been thrown out of state and federal courts, some judges appointed by Trump, over 50 times. Governors and state election officials from both parties said there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud. The Republican appointee and a lifelong Republican in charge of cybersecurity for our great country said the November 3rd election was the most secure election in American history. There is no evidence that any voting system was deleted, lost votes, or changed votes in any way compromised. I stand by our elected officials on both sides of the political aisle. Our elections are safe, and suppressing the vote by making it harder to cast your ballot is un-American. We should expand our opportunities to vote and register. Automatic registration and continuing same-day registration. Your vote is your voice, and it's how we support efficient and wise policy.
Question number 6. What ideas do you have to promote economic development in District 13?
As I mentioned before, I'm a small business owner, and my business ran through some trouble with the beginning of COVID, and we benefited from the PPP. It saved our employees for at least for a few months. And I think that should really just have been the beginning. And we allowed our state government and our national government to shut down our businesses without propping them up. And how many businesses have you seen close? And even how many businesses have closed that you haven't seen? restaurants that will never reopen. We have to do more. If we're going to prevent economic activity because of COVID restrictions, then we have to do more to help businesses. Secondly, economic development truly depends on open, at least amount of regulation possible for businesses so that they can do business. Creating opportunities for businesses to grow, to move into areas where we want them to move by improving our zoning and reducing restrictions on businesses.
Wisconsin needs wise investments into our greatest resource, our Wisconsin people and businesses. For example, Foxconn, the largest failed handout program to a foreign company in the entire country, and we question, why can we not support incentives for our own Wisconsin businesses, like we just talked about? We're at the bottom of all of the 50 states, 3 years in a row, for supporting new startups. We lead the nation in farm bankruptcies, 3 in many years, and we have farmers that are 2 times more likely to commit suicide. We have a difficulty attracting new workers and retaining them, and poverty has risen in our state. This is the fallout from extreme Republican legislation. As we move forward, our priority should be restoring our faith in our great Wisconsin businesses, investing in broadband, Main Street Wisconsin businesses, supporting farmer legislation, supporting our great schools and extension programs, and of course, our natural spaces are pivotal in our tourism industry. Protecting our parks and our lakes is key to investing in our state for generations into the future.
Well, we need to do something about the jobs that have been killed almost on the first day of Joe Biden's administration. When he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, we need people in Congress who are going to take action, make sure that the pipeline is constructed. Wisconsin jobs have been lost because of this completely insane decision. Why not get oil from an ally, from our close neighbor, instead of shipping it across the ocean in tankers? That's much more dangerous, or having it flow through on trains and tractor trailers that are more susceptible. A pipeline is the safest possible solution, and that's why I also support projects like the Enbridge 66 pipeline that goes through Wisconsin that will also create thousands of jobs. And rail is important. That's why I support the Great Lakes Basin Railroad project. That would be the largest railway project in 100 years, allowing Wisconsin manufacturers to move product to market much quicker by diverting around the Chicago rail yards. These kind of infrastructure projects would create thousands of jobs.
Going on to question number 7, what is the biggest challenge facing our schools?
As a parent of 5 and an educator of 18 years, and as a business owner, I know that every child deserves the very best in our schools and opportunities. But what taxpayers do not know is that every year, $350 million goes right out of our public school funds into private, often for-profit schools. That 70% of these students already attended these schools, and that these schools can kick out these students, private schools can kick out these students for any reason. Public schools believe every child has value. I strongly believe in school choice, but not funded with your public tax dollars. Wisconsin taxpayers cannot afford to fund 2 school systems, a private and a public. And the handouts that are happening right now are irresponsible. We also are not funding our schools at historic levels. Let us be clear. We are funding our schools at pre-2011 levels. As an educator, I will value every student in this great state. They are worth every moment of our time and investment.
Well, I guess the most important thing is to make sure our schools are actually open. If you don't even have a school open, that's obviously the biggest challenge facing us. If you don't have the schools open, we need to reopen the schools. And then it comes down to indoctrination, this cancel culture, our history being changed, canceling Christopher Columbus, children need to learn our American history, our values, and not socialist, far left-wing indoctrination, that people, can see is raising a generation that doesn't believe in America, a generation that thinks that socialism is a better system than capitalism, that doesn't understand that it was John F. Kennedy who believed in capitalism, and it was Lee Harvey Oswald that believed in socialism. We need to teach our history. People need to know their history, because if they don't, they'll be destined to repeat it.
Our children are our future. And for us who are parents like me, I have 2 kids, I got another one that's due just after the election. What would we not do for our kids? We need to invest in our children's education. However, not every kid fits into a standardized public school setting. And the other candidate, Melissa Winker, she just mentioned that she wouldn't want money going into other settings other than a public school setting. And but what she doesn't mention is that these schools are there to help kids. And if kids can only get into good schools if they have money, then not every kid is being taken care of. Only kids that come from families with enough money can afford private school education, and educations that maybe are a better fit for that child. I support private school vouchers, and I want to expand them to be universally available, so that parents can choose which school their kids can go to. If public schools can't retain enough enrollment from being in competition with private schools, then that means that parents are seeing that education of that particular school as being not as good of an education as the other schools that are available, charter schools, international language schools, and other religious schools. Parents should be able to have the choice to send their kid where they want to go. We need to give kids the most options possible, and not just the rich kids, not just the kids that come from families who can afford it, but all kids.
The maintenance of roads and bridges is a large expense for local government. How would you ensure that they receive adequate funding?
Well, we need to make sure our highways are maintained. And, we need to make sure that, local road aid is important, but highway maintenance is essential for national defense. The Dwight D. Eisenhower National System of Interstate Defense Highways was created during the Cold War and provides a way for quickly moving troops across the country and of evacuating cities if the United States is attacked by atomic bombs. Highways also provide a straight and flat place for airplanes to land during emergencies and in times of war. These infrastructure, our roads, need to be well maintained. As someone who drives for a living, it's so important that we spend the money, make the investment, making sure that our roads are adequately funded. It's our commerce, all of our food travels on these roads. It's so important that they're maintained. And it comes down to national defense too. That's why we have the national highway system, so that we are ready in times of emergency. So we need to make sure that our transportation system is kept up to date and is sufficient.
Who uses roads in rural areas, local roads? Citizens of those local areas do, and drivers who are driving across the area, especially on highways. I think that the state should bear a part of the load for the expenses of infrastructure in rural areas, and we need to find a fair balance to that load. On the technology side, I think that our technological advances are quickly changing our infrastructure needs. If you just look at COVID this last year, 2020, the number of times that there were traffic jams in 2020, way less. Anyone driving in a city could tell you that. The number of people working from home is going to continue. The percentage of people working from home is going to continue to increase. Maybe not from 2020, but it's never going to return to pre-2020 levels. I think we need to be responsive to the needs of our infrastructure. Things like self-driving cars, pretty soon are going to have a big impact on our road needs. So we need to be planning just 5-10 years out. And instead of spending many hundreds, millions of dollars on roads in our state that are meant for 20, 30 years from now, we need to be thinking, how do we respond to the technological improvements of tomorrow?
This question is about our safety, our health, and our economy. When we do not properly repair our roads and infrastructure, I'm thinking maintain our clean water, our lives and our jobs are at risk and car repairs increase. When we do not create sustainable infrastructure, we decrease our opportunity to compete. I support local communities increasing levy limits to make sure they can maintain safe roads, and a bipartisan conversation of indexing the gas tax. I also support the enforcement and thinking about the critical clean water legislation so we have clean water. I support lead remediation so we eliminate lead in our water. And for example, in Watertown, the hometown of John Jagler, who is not here tonight, Watertown has higher lead rates than Flint, Michigan. Your Republican-led government removed lead pipe replacement funding out of the last budget. Children with elevated blood levels suffer permanent health conditions, brain damage, and it can be fatal. We should be proud of living in our small communities with safe roads and healthy drinking water. It is one of the core responsibilities of good government. I will always support you, your families, and our health.
The 13th district encompasses a large area. How will you reach out to your constituents?
I propose, as state senator, I propose to produce a radio show where any of the constituents can call in, and anyone from around the state can call in, and we can talk about the issues that our state is facing, the bills that I'm supporting or not supporting in the state legislature. I want to maintain that radio show throughout my term as a state senator. Speaking about reaching out to constituents, attending forums, listening to what voters have to say, it's a huge part of being a legislator. Unfortunately, not everyone shares that same value in listening to constituents. John Jagler, he isn't here. It's the only debate, only forum for this election, and he decided not to come. Not sure why. I think you should ask him.
What is a representative? Someone who represents the will of the people, listens, and then takes action to make people's lives better. As your future senator, I will have regular listening sessions, consistent feedback, and honest communication that uses truth to guide policy, not partisan and obstruction tactics. There is a deep divide in communities, as spoken about before, and it has grown dangerously. We need to sit down together, no matter what your political party, and solve problems. Our elected leaders should lead with honesty, courage, and wisdom. Policy should be created that lifts us all up, and wages for working families are stagnant here. So, for example, policy like Medicaid expansion is not passed only because of political games. Medicaid expansion costs us nothing, saves us money. Private insured folks will save 7 to 11%, and it will give 80,000 more Wisconsinites health insurance. It is compassionate and fiscally responsible, and it is not passed. It is supported by 80% of Wisconsinites. We are left with why. Why won't elected officials who don't show up to public forums pass common sense, compassionate legislation that is fiscally responsible?
How will I reach out to my constituents in a large district? Well, I'll be putting a lot of miles on my car. And that's why we need to build the Keystone Pipeline to make sure oil prices are low and gasoline is cheap. And we need to make sure we're energy independent. And we need to support the Enbridge Line 66 pipeline too. So, I have a background in transportation. I served in the Air Force for 4 years. I was part of a mobile unit. And I have a Class A, B, C, D commercial driver's license because of that. And for the last 10 years, I've been driving for a company based in the 13th district. So I've been driving out of Cambridge all over the district. I actually drove for the First Lady, drove for the White House staff when the First Lady, Melania Trump, was in Wisconsin recently on Halloween, actually. It was quite the Halloween. Well, another thing that we need to do too is, well, let me say that not just lowering gasoline prices through projects like the Keystone Pipeline, we need to also get rid of the gasoline tax. And I am well equipped to travel the district with all my years of experience, having driven across. I've lived in multiple locations in the 13th district. I lived in Danville, right outside of Columbus. I lived in a old boarding house that was built back in the 1840s near Astico State Park. A beautiful area if you ever get a chance to see it. They have an old bridge from the Civil War era out there. I also lived in a schoolhouse between Lake Mills and Watertown. So I know the district well, and I'll be able to meet with all those constituents.
And our last question, what challenges do you see in the proposed state budget?
Governor Evers has proposed a comprehensive budget that will build our great state back as we work through the COVID pandemic, supporting our great businesses, our essential workers, and our schools, supporting our hardworking farmers so they have what they need to work through these challenges also. He has a lot of challenges at this point because the Republicans have led with obstruction and lawsuits. So our challenge that we have talked about repeatedly is sitting down at the table and working through how we support a unified vision and a prosperous future for our great state. There are so many valid and wonderful ideas that come from the people of our great state through listening sessions all across communities. So listening to our great people, supporting what we need to build back Wisconsin better. We've talked about some excellent ideas to move our state forward.
Well, let's talk about an issue that we haven't talked about in a long time. The debt, the national debt, the state debt, deficits. Our spending is out of control. We're going to bankrupt this country. We've been spending, we're passing the tab on to the next generation for decades. And we've accumulated this massive national debt. And we are bankrupting our country. We are sacrificing our future. We need to look at every dollar spent and make sure that's being spent efficiently. And, obviously in a pandemic like we're in right now, people need help and we need to provide that help. But we can't.
Oh, Spencer, I think you turned your microphone on.
Okay, I was saying that we got to quit spending like a drunken sailor, accumulating a massive debt. Our future depends on us tackling this problem. We cannot spend and spend and spend and not face a day of reckoning. Someday we'll have to pay this debt, and we are going to be in such a deep hole.
I think that both the other candidates make some good points. One, national debt, state debt, that's an important thing to consider. High taxes are problematic to businesses and to our voters and to the people in our state. On the other hand, we desperately need improvements to our education. We desperately need support for our businesses who have suffered under COVID. We need to find some good common ground where we can accomplish the best of everything within a budget that doesn't take us extraordinarily into debt. The biggest challenge with the proposed state budget, some of the biggest problems is that they include, the budget is included, the Governor Evers budget includes all kinds of proposals that have nothing to do with the budget. Like he's trying to achieve certain things around redistricting within the budget. It's not the appropriate place. He's trying to require universal background checks for firearms within the budget, not the appropriate place, and an awful idea to begin with. And I wish we had a question about that. I would like to talk about that some more. And he's including all kinds of things that aren't budget related in order to try to pass laws that aren't a budget.
Thank you. In closing, each candidate will have 2 minutes to tell us why they are the best candidate for the State Senate District 13.
My roots in our state run deep. I was born in Neenah, and my family is from Fond du Lac, where one uncle was on the city council and another ran for county sheriff. I grew up in McFarland, and after graduating from high school in 1998, I enlisted in the Air Force for 4 years and was stationed at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. On duty during the 9/11 terrorist attacks, I received the Joint Service Achievement Medal for my actions that day. I've always wanted to serve my country. It's why I joined the Air Force, and it's why I've campaigned all around the state in different districts. I think we have serious challenges that we need to face, serious problems that need to be addressed, serious issues that need to be tackled, and we need people with courage that are going to fight. Now, John Jagler doesn't even show up for debates. Where is he? Why won't he debate? Maybe he won't debate because he'll have to answer to why he hasn't signed the term limits pledge. Maybe he won't debate because he'll have to answer to why he snubbed President Trump by rejecting the fraudulent, by accepting the fraudulent 2020 election outcome. He believes that Joe Biden won, that he's ignoring all the evidence that Trump provided, that there was a massive election fraud, that this election was stolen. Joe Biden stole the 2020 election. He is not a legitimate president. Donald Trump won, and John Jagler has ignored that fact. He accepts these fraudulent election results. He won't fight election fraud because he's guilty of it himself. He's benefited from election fraud. He's been on the ballot over and over again, first place in elections where there's 5 candidates. He's had a 20 percentage point advantage. We need to change this system that's broken. You can't just expect people to believe in the system when it's rigged.
Go ahead, Ben.
I chose to run with the Solidarity Party because, like many Americans, I feel that neither Republicans nor Democrats represent me. We need better than the division they've caused. Instead of working for the good of the country, they jostle for power, looking for opportunities to blame each other. It doesn't have to be this way. It's not hopeless, and there is a way forward. I'm tired of voting for the lesser of two evils. I'm tired of being told that my vote is wasted if I don't vote for a Republican or a Democrat. How long will we let those in power manipulate us? We must begin by believing that we can defeat the powerful. The greatest obstacle to taking down the powerful is the belief that it cannot be done. They make us believe that we are too small, that our voice doesn't count, that we can't make a difference unless we support them. Your vote is your voice. Even if your candidate doesn't win, you will be heard. Vote for what you believe in. I'm running as the Solidarity Party candidate because I hope for the future. Because the more we believe and stand together, the more others will too. Hope begets hope. We can stand against corruption, against partisan bias, against power-grabbing politics, with positive solutions for our state and our people. If you dare to hope, you will be heard. Remember, your vote is your voice. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ben. I hope for the future too, and thank you for your positive thoughts. It has been a tough year for so many of us. Our political climate has broken relationships, questioned truth and science, and obstructed good government that's meant to help us through dark times. January 6th, the horrific day where police officers were murdered and significant property damage to our capital has led many to rethink party politics. We look to our elected officials for courage, truth, and wisdom, and they should show up and listen and take action. As your future senator, I will work with you across party lines to solve complex problems. I have talked to hundreds of constituents, and this is what they are saying. I am listening. Affordable health care, clear COVID plan, working together for vaccinations and safe businesses and schools, great jobs, and thriving families. You don't have to make a choice. and our first responders, our police and firefighters, like my husband, are necessary for safe communities. They should have more funding for training, not less. They are incredibly courageous, and they are there when we need them. We need to be there for them. Also, legalizing marijuana, like 83% of our fellow Wisconsinites. I'm listening from veterans who need marijuana for PTSD or children with chronic serious illnesses. It's time to legalize, regulate, and tax. My great-grandfather crossed the Atlantic from Germany in 1865, starting his own furniture business in Milwaukee. My grandfather was a dentist and started a practice in Economowoc. My family now lives only 2 doors away from my parents' home. My children attend the very same school that my father attended as a child. This community matters to us as it matters to you. And as a woman of faith, I fight for a society that elevates us to love each other and be compassionate. As an educator, I know that every child deserves the very best education. As a family business owner, I understand the weight of balancing growth and financial risk while paying bills. And as a firefighting family, we understand the sacrifices our frontline workers make to keep us safe. Together, we can return our state back to its foundational values of hard work and loving and caring for our neighbors. My name is Melissa Winker, and I ask for your vote on April 6th. Please visit my website for more information, winkerforwisconsin.com. And a reminder, you do have to request your absentee ballot again, if that's how you choose to vote this year, at myvote.wi.gov. Thank you again very much to the moderators and organization this evening.
And thank you to our candidates for taking time to be with us and for letting the voters get to know you better. Election Day is April 6th. For more information, you can go to myvote.wi.gov or contact your municipal clerk's office. Thank you for being a more informed voter, and good night.
Thank you.